This isn't gonna work well.
It's fun.
In this video, we're going to run an operating session that's going to take us from Switch Junction all the way over to the Brownsville yard, up to the Bentleyville yard, and then over to the city of Carleton, and ultimately to our new brewery. Hi everybody, I'm Steve Brown and welcome to It's My Railroad. On this channel, we bring you the highest quality modeling videos we possibly can, showing you how to build great scenes, dioramas, and even cool model railroad stuff just like this. So if you're into that sort of thing, make sure and subscribe. And while you're there, check out that join button to become a channel member for even more content. Well, as I said, today we're going to be following a little operating session around here, but a couple things before we get started. One, you see, I'm wearing a cutoff sleeve shirt. It is funny how 1 week ago today, it was in the 50s in my hobby room. And right now, it's pushing north of 100. So with your permission, I'm just going to be a little comfortable while we get this thing done. Second thing is, I am running my trains right now to sort of get the feel for operations and to fine tune my track and turnouts, make sure everything is moving smoothly. So you're not gonna see this pristine model railroad. Don't have time to clean up for it just to make a video. But what you are gonna see is the opening stages of how I plan to do operations here on the BSR. So anyway, with all that in place, let me get you in closer and let's take a look at Extra 116 getting ready to pull out of Switch Junction. Okay, to get started, let me introduce you to our train. To do so, let me just get this grain loader out of the way so we can see what we've got going on back here. This is Extra 116. It's a local with a warrant to operate freely within Switch Junction. This boxcar here is loaded with cotton on its way to our new textile mill at Carleton. This car is loaded with produce on its way to Port Smith to be ultimately loaded onto barges and shipped downriver. This skeleton log car loaded with logs on its way to the S.L. Brown sawmill. These two cars here loaded with grain on their way to the Carleton brewery. We're going to see that in just a little bit. And lastly, we've got this coal car here loaded with coal on its way to the Brownsville yard and to places beyond that. Let's just get this back in here. And then let's go ahead and pull this train out of the station, as it were. Train pulls out of Switch Junction. Well, we got a little problem with the track here and there. We're working on that. Pulls out of Switch Junction, crosses over Beggars Canyon, and through a tunnel. When the train comes through the tunnel, it's in a scene that we call Fertile Valley. Ultimately, the train will come to a stop right here at a place we call Dowling Point and wait for clearance to get on the main line. That's train number 102, a stack train. And once it clears that tunnel, we can get clearance to move onto the main line. Now I've got some turnouts on the back that I need to know the position of right now before this train gets out onto the main line. So I've got these two signals here, the tall tower and the dwarf, and I use those to indicate getting clearance to go on the main. The first thing we'll do is we'll give them clearance to go onto the main by a green light. Then that dwarf signal that you see lets me know the position of the turnout to get onto the main line. Let's set that one. With both green lights, we are now cleared to head over to the Brownsville yard. Once 116 emerges from that canyon right there, I know I can go through and reset those turnouts so I don't derail my mainline train when it comes through. Then 116 comes into the Brownsville arrival departure track and comes to a stop. At this point, we'll just uncouple 116 from the consist using my barbecue skewer. and then pull 116 out of the way. All right, so before we get to switching these cars out, let me introduce you to what you're looking at. Back here, you've got the westbound mainline track. Here you've got the eastbound mainline track. This, of course, is our arrival track. This track here is the classification track for the Bentleyville yard. We're going to be using that in just a minute. This is the classification track for Port Smith. This is the classification track for Switch Junction. And this one is for the actual town of Brownsville itself. This little guy right here is switcher number 9211, and we're going to use him to switch out these cars. Let's get on it. So with the switcher hooked on, first thing we're going to do is take that coal car and we're going to move it over here to the Brownsville classification track. Let's get on doing that. Yeah, we'll push that back just a little bit more to make sure we're clear. And then uncouple the cars. All right, let's put these two grain cars here on the Bentleyville classification track. And we'll just get that log car off of there. And then we'll move that car over to the Brownsville classification track. Actually, this just in from the yard master, the Brownsville classification track is all full up. So we have been directed to put it on our secondary track, which we're going to call a house track. A couple of those. Now let's move this produce car over to the port classification track. With that reefer car uncoupled, time to take the remaining car and put it on the Bentleyville classification track. And let's get our switcher off that train. Some of this stuff is pretty hard to see because it's under this deck. There we go. That was easy enough. Now let's get the switcher out of there and prepare to move that train up to Bentleyville. One quick thing I'll show you here is when the switches are done, I actually have a place that I park them until they're needed again. And in this case, 9211 is not going to be needed again. Now I can introduce you to the locomotive that's going to be taking that 6-car train up to Bentleyville. Oh, little background by the way, that's normally going to be a 12-car train, but I don't have the locomotives presently to pull it up the grade. But for the purpose of what I'm showing you today, this is going to be fine. Anyway, 7835 is a 6-axle diesel that would normally be up in the Bentleyville yard. I have it down here right now because it just dropped off a train, and we're going to back it into position to pick up that train headed for the Bentleyville yard. And there we go. Let's pull out to the departure track and look for clearance to get up to Bentleyville. .7835 comes to a stop on the departure track, waiting for clearance to get onto the main line. Now, in the future, we're going to have a couple signals there that'll tell him when he can leave, but for now, we're just going to have to wait until our stack train goes by, which I can hear it coming in the distance. It'll be passing by very soon. And there it is. While that's going by, I got to tell you, part of the fun of the way I've got this set up is I can let that train run all the time, and then I can be switching in and out off the main line, on the main line, kind of running operations by myself, but like there's more than one person here. It's a lot of fun. Okay, with the stack train gone, we can switch the turnout from the departure track onto the main line. In this case, I have it set up where I've got a switch motor to do that. That's what you hear there. And now let's pull out onto the main. Some of you familiar with the Brownsville Railroad know that when we pull out of the Brownsville yard, we do a loop that takes us around the town of Brownsville and then heads us west on the main line. We bring the train to a stop right here at the entrance to the canyon and wait for clearance to go into the next block. And here's why. I have two switch motors that switch two turnouts automatically for a single line main halfway through the loop. If I set that guy loose right now, there's a chance he can trip one of those turnouts and derail the other train or be derailed himself. So we're just going to wait until the stack train gets clear of that area, and then we'll have clearance to move forward. Well, it looks like the stack train has cleared the single line main and we have clearance to move towards Bentleyville. Let's get going. While the train's working its up to this tunnel portal, let me introduce you to Fertile Valley, and specifically to this point called Riley's Bend. If you follow this around, you'll see that there's a double track main that goes to a single track main right here. And here's the thing, those two signals that you see there are actually controlled by the turnout, and I have a couple of switch motors that'll sense the train and align the turnout. You can see I've already got a green light to go uphill. So that lets me know the train is cleared to go onto the single track main, which is to the left, to the right of that green signal. After traveling behind the layout for just a little bit, 7835 emerges in the Caliente cut and works its way over to the arrival track for the Bentleyville yard. All right, 7835 has successfully arrived at the Bentleyville yard, and let's go ahead and just uncouple and get that locomotive out of there. All right, so let's just take a minute and let me introduce you to the Bentleyville yard. This is the eastbound mainline track. This is the arrival track. There's a departure track down there. This is the classification track to get down to the Brownsville yard. This is the classification track for going up to Carleton. This is the classification track right here for going to Riley. And then we've got a couple spare tracks. Actually, this one back here, I think I'm going to be using to go to Caliente Flats where we pick up concrete. So what we need to do right now is take this train, break it up, make up the train that's going to go to Carleton, and just keep on chugging. So to get this operation going, we're going to get our switcher 5332 kind of buried back in there. We're going to bring it out and tag him on right here to start switching these cars. Let's get on that. The first thing we're going to do is take these two cars here loaded with concrete and place them back up here on the Caliente Flats classification track. So let's get going on that. Let's see if we clear the next track. Nope, looks like we need to go back just a little further. That looks pretty good. Let's get those cars coupled. Now let's take these three cars and move them over to the Carleton classification track. All right, we got a couple other cars to pick up here to make up this consist. Let's get that done right now. I'm still staging my cars on the layout, so some of these cars aren't exactly in the right order, but what I want to do is I want to take this pulpwood car right here and send it to the team track at Carleton. And I also want to take this box car, and send them up to Carleton. So I think the first thing we need to do is grab this cut of cars, uncouple it there, pull it out, put the pulpwood car on the train we already staged for Carleton. Then we'll grab those two box cars, load them on the front of it, and then we can just keep moving. Let's uncouple the switcher. Send it to get that long cut of cars. The switcher's pulling out onto my drill track. This is the track I use to be able to switch cars in and out, and it can handle a pretty long train. But in the unlikely event there's an even longer train, I've got a backup maneuver where it can pull out onto the branch line and get this done. But for right now, it looks like we're in pretty good shape. So let's just bring that pulpwood car back to the Carleton classification track. Go. Let's cut off that car. And put the rest of that train back on the siding we got it from. That looks pretty good. Cut off those cars. Now let's get back here, pick up our 2 remaining box cars, put them on the train bound for Carleton, and then we will get that train up to Carleton. All right, let's uncouple this switcher and send it home, and then bring in our road switchers to take that to Carleton. I don't have enough road switchers to do the entire layout, but I got some coming and I should get them any day now. But for now, we're gonna take the same 2 switchers you saw at the beginning of the video, and we're gonna use them to keep going with operations. First thing to do is to back those things up, hook into our train, and head out to Carleton. And well, we're in luck because we get another stack train coming through, and the switcher's waiting for that. Once this stack train makes it up to here, for me, that's my clearance to let that set of switchers head up to Carleton. So when you see that happen, you'll see those switchers pull out. Now we can move our switcher out onto the main line. On its way up to Carleton, our switcher is going to be passing by the town, the location, the scene of Riley. You see I got some box cars back there, and you see I got an awesome can of WD-40 just waiting to be used. This is why I need 2 switchers to get to Carleton When I designed this grade, I made it steeper than I anticipated. I only wanted one locomotive coming up here, but I ended up with two, and so I need two switchers to get into Carleton. As the train arrives at Carleton, it initially stops right here on our arrival departure track. So I called this the arrival departure track, but it's actually the arrival track. I used the branch line down there for the departure track. I also have a little track back here, so if I need to do a little switching here to make it better to switch the town, then I can do that. But for right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this carload of goods and move it over to where the textile mill is, because there's some wool in that car. There's a couple of cars sitting over there we're gonna have to pull and bring back over here. So it's gonna be a little engine run around, a little bit of fun. First things first, let's uncouple this car and move it forward. All right, so we're gonna grab these two empty cars, temporarily set them on this track, spot that car, and then we'll grab those two cars and move them over to our departure track. Well, this is interesting. I can't actually see the coupler. I'm not even close. Okay, so I bring the cars back over here to the runaround area. And I overshot it. Well, let's just go forward a little bit. And that looks good right there. So we'll uncouple the cars, do a runaround maneuver, and then push them over to the departure area. So we'll go ahead and switch the turnout and bring these two cars, stage them back here on what's going to be the de facto departure track. Right, so we got another cut of cars that we can switch out all at one time. So for now, we'll take the grain cars off, get this train moving, and switched out. Okay, so I backed in here to get the next set of 3 cars and realized I need to clear the track for the brewery to use it as a tail track, in essence, to switch out the next industry. So what we need to do, my mistake, is uncouple, head back to the brewery, pull the empty cars, put them on the departure track, then we can come back and get these. Sorry to waste your time, but hey, it's the regular guy way. Be back in to pick up that boxcar. And I've learned I kind of need to check and make sure it's connected. There we go. Let's pull it out. Actually, while we're waiting for the train to come back, I think what I want to do is grab this car right here. And we're going to push it back to grab a flat car that's up there, which is empty and ready for outbound. We'll take both cars, push them way down there, and then spot this pulpwood car on the team track. By the way, as we pick up this flat car from the team track, I got to tell you, my very first ever team track. I'm very excited. All right, let's pull those guys out. I'm gonna bring them way down here and get them out of the way. Now let's spot a remaining box car. We can finally get those grain cars over to the brewery. All right, with that car spotted, time to clean up the cars we left on the track, put them on the departure track, and then grab our grain cars. And then we push those cars back onto the departure track with enough clearance to be able to clear the runaround track. And we'll just bring those two grain cars right here to the runaround area. Now we'll just push those cars over to the brewery and get ready to get out of Dodge. And boom, there you go. That is me taking two grain cars from Switch Junction, switching them through a couple of yards and getting them up there to the brewery. Now you can tell I've got some track tune-up to do. I got a little track cleaning to do, but I haven't run operations in, I don't know, almost a year and a half. And I totally dug doing this. So I'm going to take this train back down to Bentleyville. I'll probably just keep on going. And you know something? Thanks for joining me for this little switching operations session. I sure hope you enjoyed watching the video. I had a great time making it, as you can tell. And until next time, my name is Steve Brown, and rail on, my friends.